Shatter Sanders is too good to ignore. Yet Kevin Stefanski keeps doing just that, while Dillon Gabriel gets repeated starts despite inconsistency. Sanders rides the bench, leaving fans and analysts baffled. The October 26 game only added fuel. Gabriel faltered once the scripted plays ran out, and Stefanski had no answers. Sanders, known for his composure and high football IQ, could have been the spark. Instead, the team unraveled, and Stefanski's refusal to adapt now looks less like a choice and more like a liability.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
This isn't just a quarterback battle. It's a symptom of something deeper. Stefanski's coaching choices are now under a microscope, and many believe his decisions aren't purely football-driven. Whether it's personal bias, management pressure, or just misjudgment, the fallout is growing. The team's identity crisis, media blowback, and growing fan frustration all trace back to one question. Why isn't Shatter Sanders on the field? Kevin Stefanski just got handed one of the most brutal reality checks of his coaching career, and it came gift-wrapped with a public takedown from another coach. Mike Vrabel didn't mince words. After the October 26 game between the Patriots and Browns, Vrabel came out swinging, calling Stefanski a gimmick coach. Not passive, not subtle, not even coach speak vague. Straight up labeled him a gimmick. And if you've been paying attention this season, it's hard to argue that he's wrong. Because what followed that call-out? A complete unraveling. A clear moment where the smoke, mirrors, and first-drive success couldn't cover up what's really been going on in Cleveland. An offense built on scripts, but with no answers once those scripts run out. And the minute that offense gets forced off the page, they crumble. The Browns came into that game with a solid opening. Sharp execution, confidence, maybe even a little swagger. But after that initial drive, flatline. It was like they used up their entire playbook in the first 10 minutes. The Patriots adjusted. The Browns didn't. And Stefanski, once again, had no counter. No plan B. Just rinse, repeat, stall. That's where the gimmick label sticks. It's not about trick plays or flashy formations. It's about being the kind of coach who thrives on control, when things are going exactly as planned, and falls apart the moment they aren't. That's a reputation now circling Stefanski. And it didn't start with Vrabel's comment, but it sure exploded after. And right at the center of all this chaos, the quarterback controversy. It's been the elephant in the Browns' locker room all season. The insistence on starting Dillon Gabriel over Shatter Sanders has turned into one of the most baffling and divisive coaching decisions in recent memory. Sanders has the arm, the vision, the poise, and the leadership. Gabriel? Serviceable at best. But for whatever reason, Stefanski won't budge. He keeps sticking with a quarterback who can't finish games, while one of the most exciting young talents in football sits untouched on the bench. And people are fed up. Critics and fans alike are calling it what it looks like, either blatant favoritism or some kind of stubborn loyalty that's costing the team dearly. Sanders has shown every quality you want in a franchise quarterback, but week after week, he's benched. It's not a talent issue. It's not an injury issue. So what is it? That's where the questions turn ugly. Is this personal? Is it ego? Is Stefanski protecting his guy, even if it means tanking winnable games? Because whatever the reason, it's creating a toxic cloud over the entire season. And it's not just about Sanders being more talented. It's about what that decision represents. A coach who's either unwilling to adapt or too insecure to admit he got it wrong. That kind of leadership doesn't just kill momentum. It fractures trust. You think players in the locker room don't see what's going on? They know. They feel it. And that kind of internal disconnect doesn't stay quiet for long. What's worse is how this drama is playing out in the media. The coverage around Cleveland isn't just critical, it's curated. That's the word fans keep using, scripted. Because instead of open conversation about what's really happening, it feels like certain narratives are being pushed to protect someone or bury someone else. And let's not pretend this is normal. The media's job is to question decisions like this. But when coverage starts sounding more like damage control than analysis, people start asking bigger questions. Who's influencing these stories? Why is criticism being softened? And who benefits from this storyline staying on message? The bias is loud. And it's part of what's fueling the fire around Stefanski. Fans aren't just mad at the decisions. They're furious at how those decisions are being defended. It's the gaslighting of an entire fan base. And people are done playing along. It all paints a clear picture. A team in disarray, a coach under fire, and a locker room that can't possibly be unified when the talent is this mismanaged. The persistent refusal to start Sanders has become symbolic. It's no longer just about who's under center. It's about the direction of the franchise and whether Stefanski's vision has any credibility left. At this point, the dysfunction is impossible to ignore. Stefanski's reluctance to pivot is dragging the Browns into a deeper hole with each game. The offense can't adapt. The quarterback choices don't make sense. And the fans? They've hit a breaking point. The public sentiment in Cleveland is turning fast. People aren't calling for tweaks or adjustments anymore. They're calling for replacements. Because there's only so many times you can say we just didn't execute before it stops being an excuse and starts being an indictment. And with this latest media storm, the situation feels combustible. Mike Vrabel's comment wasn't just a spark. It was an accelerant. He voiced what fans have been thinking, what critics have been hinting at, and what players are probably whispering behind closed doors. And once that kind of critique hits the airwaves, there's no putting it back in the box. The Browns are now in the uncomfortable spotlight of national scrutiny. And if they thought the quarterback decision was controversial before, it's only going to get louder from here, because this isn't going away. If anything, it's about to get worse. The league is watching. Other teams are watching. Every snap, every coaching decision, every media appearance. It's all under the microscope. Stefanski is no longer being judged on wins and losses alone. He's being judged on leadership, credibility, and whether he's capable of evolving in a league that moves fast and demands accountability. And here's the problem. He's not showing signs of change. He's digging in, holding the line, doubling down on the exact decisions that have turned a promising season into a full-blown circus. And at some point, that's not just bad coaching, it's sabotage. Whether intentional or not, the refusal to make the obvious move has become the defining flaw of Stefanski's tenure. The Browns are one of the most passionate, loyal fan bases in football. But that loyalty isn't unconditional. They've watched this team rebuild, restart, and reset more times than they can count. And every time, they buy back in until they're burned again. This situation with Stefanski, it's starting to feel like the same cycle all over again. Wasted talent, frustrated fans, and a leadership team that just can't seem to get out of its own way. The crazy part? This could have been avoided with the right quarterback call, with smarter mid-game adjustments, with honest, transparent media communication. But none of that happened. And now the Browns are paying the price, with losses, with drama, and with a head coach who's quickly becoming the most polarizing figure in Cleveland sports. So what happens next? If Stefanski keeps ignoring the writing on the wall, the fans won't be the only ones calling for change. The longer this quarterback debacle drags on, the louder the noise gets. And in the NFL, when the noise gets this loud, someone usually takes a fall. The real question is, will Stefanski change before it's too late? Or will he keep pretending that scripted drives and questionable loyalty are enough to win in this league? Right now, it looks like the Browns are staring down a choice. Keep protecting a coach who won't evolve, or start building a team around the talent they already have, beginning with the quarterback who should have been leading them weeks ago. We want to hear from you. Is Stefanski finishing Cleveland? Should Shatter Sanders be starting right now? And do you think Mike Vrabel's comments were harsh? Or just plain honest? Drop your take in the comments. If you're just as exhausted by this mess as the rest of us, hit that like button. Share this with your Browns group chats, your fantasy leagues, or anyone else wondering what's really going on in Cleveland. And make sure you subscribe. We're not done with this story. Not even close. Kevin Stefanski wasn't supposed to be the villain in Cleveland's latest chapter of dysfunction. A few years ago, he looked like the guy who might finally break the cycle. The calm, cerebral coach who brought structure and discipline to a team that had known chaos for too long. But now, that narrative is in shambles. This season has stripped the gloss off his reputation, layer by layer, and what's left isn't pretty. Not because of one bad game. Not even because of one bad quarterback decision. but because of how he's handling all of it. The stubbornness, the denial, the refusal to adapt even when the whole football world is screaming at him to wake up. You can't keep calling yourself a player's coach while leaving your best player on the bench for no reason. Shatter Sanders didn't just show flashes of greatness. He consistently outperformed expectations. He's got poise, he's got leadership, and most importantly, he knows how to win. You can see it in his decision-making. You can feel it in his presence. And yet, week after week, Stefanski turns back to Dillon Gabriel, as if repetition will eventually produce results. It won't, and it hasn't. Gabriel might be likable. He might be a good teammate. But he's not the guy who's going to take this team where it needs to go. Everyone sees it, except the one person who has the power to make the switch. The fans are done trying to make sense of it. They're not analyzing stats anymore. They're not pointing to film breakdowns. They're just asking the most basic question. Why? Why is Shatter Sanders not starting? And the silence is louder than any press conference. Stefanski's responses have been vague at best. We believe in our guys. It's about the process. Dillon gives us the best chance right now. None of that means anything anymore. The team is underperforming. The offense is stale. And the process is falling apart in real time. At a certain point, trust the process turns into protect a mistake. And fans know the difference. What makes all this even more insulting is how the media around the team has been handling it. Instead of pressing Stefanski on these decisions, much of the local coverage has started feeling controlled, sanitized, like someone's editing the narrative before it hits the public. When reporters start avoiding the hard questions, and coverage leans more toward damage control than accountability, fans tune out. Or worse, they get angry. Because now it doesn't just feel like the coach is gaslighting them. It feels like the media is complicit. This entire situation has started to reek of internal politics. Like there's more going on behind the scenes than anyone's admitting. A power struggle? Maybe. A personal grudge? Possibly. Strategic misjudgment? Definitely. But whatever the cause, the effect is clear. The Browns are self-sabotaging, and Stefanski's choices are driving the team into the ground. And what Mike Verbal said, that was just the spark. The moment he called Stefanski a gimmick coach. The floodgates opened. It wasn't just trash talk. It was a validation of what so many have been feeling. Verbal gave the public permission to say it out loud. And once that happened, there was no putting the genie back in the bottle. Now every bad play call, every slow start, every failed adjustment, it all looks like a gimmick. The narrative has shifted. Stefanski isn't being criticized like a normal head coach anymore. He's being dissected like a case study. Analysts are asking deeper questions. Can he lead men? Can he evolve? Is he more committed to a system than he is to success? And the more he defends the status quo, the more he reinforces the worst assumptions about his leadership. Let's talk about leadership. Real leadership isn't about sticking to a plan no matter what. It's about knowing when to change course. It's about having the humility to admit when something isn't working and the guts to do something about it. There is nothing noble about watching your team flounder because you're too proud to change quarterbacks. Stefanski is sending a message to his locker room, whether he realizes it or not. And that message is, performance doesn't matter. Favoritism matters more. System fit matters more. Coach comfort matters more. That's dangerous. That's how you lose not just games, but respect. It's not just fans turning against him now. It's the vibe. The energy around this team is wrong. It feels disconnected, like everyone's waiting for something to change, but no one believes it will. That's when you know the trust is gone. And when a head coach loses the trust of the fans and the players, the clock starts ticking. Loudly, the Browns management is going to have to make a decision sooner rather than later. Do they ride this out and hope Stefanski turns it around? Or do they step in and make the kind of bold, uncomfortable choices that winning organizations make? Because doing nothing is a choice too. And so far, doing nothing has turned the season into a PR disaster. There's already talk swirling. People are speculating about locker room fractures, about certain players being frustrated with the quarterback situation, about Stefanski losing his grip on the culture he worked so hard to build. This is how it happens. Not all at once, but piece by piece. One bad game becomes a trend. One strange decision becomes a pattern. One outside voice, like Mike Verbal, says what everyone's thinking, and suddenly the whole thing starts unraveling. And look, Verbal didn't create this drama. He just pulled the curtain back on it. He said out loud what analysts have been hinting at for weeks. This coaching staff isn't cutting it. The scheme isn't working. The leadership is falling short. And the excuses have run out. If Stefanski had made the quarterback switch weeks ago, maybe this whole thing plays out differently. Maybe Sanders gets the reps he deserves. The offense finds its rhythm, and the Browns claw their way back into contention. But that's not what happened. What happened is the coach got called out, and then proved his critics right in real time. The offense collapsed. The media spun. The fans snapped. And now, the Browns are at a crossroads. If they keep doubling down on Gabriel, on the same stale scheme, on the same rigid decisions, they're not just risking the season. They're risking their future. Because players like Sanders don't sit quietly forever. They want to compete. They want to lead. And if they can't do it here, they'll find somewhere else to do it. That's what's really at stake. Not just a few wins or losses, but the culture of this franchise moving forward. This was supposed to be the season where things clicked, where Stefanski proved the doubters wrong. Instead, we're talking about whether or not he'll survive the year. And you know what's really wild? This whole narrative could shift overnight if he just made the right call. If he just did what the entire football world already knows needs to happen. Start Sanders. Give your team the best chance. Show the locker room that you value performance over politics. But until that happens, the chaos continues. Let's be brutally honest. At this point, it's not just about one bad decision. It's the accumulation of decisions. It's a pattern of dysfunction that's become way too familiar to Browns fans. You don't need to be an expert in X's and O's to see that something is fundamentally broken here. Kevin Stefanski isn't failing because he's clueless. He's failing because he refuses to evolve. Because he's clinging to a system that clearly isn't working. Because he's ignoring the obvious, not just in the playbook, but in the personnel. And that's the kind of coaching that turns frustration into resentment. No matter how many press conferences he does, no matter how polished the messaging is, you can't spin this into something it's not. The Browns aren't just struggling, they're underachieving. And there's a difference. Struggling happens when you're fighting against the odds. Underachieving happens when you have the tools, but you keep using them wrong. Sanders is the perfect example of that. He's not just talented. He's ready. He's the kind of player that should energize your locker room, your city, and your season. But instead, he's been shoved into the shadows, sitting on the sidelines while a clearly ineffective Dylan Gabriel continues to start. And let's not forget, this is an isolated game here or there. This is a consistent pattern. Gabriel starts. The offense shows some signs of life early on. Then it stalls. Adjustments don't come. The defense holds on as long as it can. And then the whole thing crumbles under the weight of predictability. Week after week. Same result. So again, you have to ask, what is Stefanski actually protecting here? Because it's clearly not the scoreboard. It's not the locker room. And it's definitely not the fan sanity. And you know what makes this sting even more? The Browns aren't a bad team. That's what makes this different from all those painful years when expectations were in the basement. This team has talent. The defense is legit. There are playmakers on both sides of the ball. The fans believed. There was momentum. There was potential. And now, it feels like it's being flushed away, game by game, decision by decision, quote by quote. The tension isn't just building. It's boiling. You can feel it in the crowd noise. You can see it on social media. You can hear it in the way national analysts are finally starting to talk about Cleveland again. Not as a joke, but as a case study in how bad leadership can drag a good roster into mediocrity. And that's the thing, this is leadership. This isn't just a QB battle gone wrong. This is about direction, identity, trust. And right now there's none of that. Stefanski has reached a critical point in his tenure. It's no longer about tweaking a game plan or switching up a formation. It's about whether he still has the authority, the respect, and the clarity to lead this team forward. Because when you keep making the same mistake and defending it, You lose the benefit of the doubt. And when the fans stop believing, that's when you know it's real. You don't get unlimited chances in the NFL. Not when you waste talent. Not when you lose winnable games. Not when you look like you've given up on evolving. And the most tragic part of all of this? It feels like the Browns are once again letting the moment pass them by. They could have turned the page by now. They could have sparked something with a bold decision. They could have shown the league that they're serious about growth, about adapting, about winning. Instead, they chose denial. They chose to protect the gimmick. And now, the season is slipping. The locker room is cooling. The media is circling. And the fans, some of the most loyal in the league, are getting eerily quiet. And that silence, that's not indifference. That's disappointment. So here's where it stands. Stefanski is out of time. The next move has to be the right one. No more excuses. No more scripted nonsense. No more trust the process. The only thing left to trust is the scoreboard, and right now, it's not in his favor. If he keeps riding with Gabriel, if he keeps shutting out Sanders, if he keeps pretending the noise isn't real, then it's not just a coaching mistake anymore. It's a choice that may cost him everything. Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this drama is far from over. Should Stefanski still be calling the shots? Or is it finally time for someone else to take the reins? Like this video if you're tired of watching talent get wasted. Share it with your crew who've been yelling at the screen every week. And subscribe if you want front row seats to the next chapter of this Brown saga. Because if this season continues the way it's going, the real fireworks haven't even started.